All right, so you guys will probably remember I met randomly the guy that owns my father's Toyota 2000 GT. When I say my father's, the car my father used to have when I was a kid growing up. Pebble Beach in 2018 is when I met the guy. When he realized that it was my dad's car and we made the connection, he said, well, you have to come drive this car. I live in South Florida. You have to let me know. And so it was on. I was supposed to drive the car. When I first met the guy, and I'm not saying his name, he wants to remain anonymous. He's a very private guy, and he has his reasons. So I'm just not going to refer to him by name. But I met the guy, gave me his business card, and shortly after Pebble Beach, when I got back home, I sent him a long email saying how unlikely and crazy it was to meet him and how grateful I was for the opportunity in the future to drive the car. I mean, to see it alone would have been amazing, but he's like, no, you have to drive the car, as you might remember from the story. And so I didn't get a response to the email. I emailed him again, no response. And I'm trying to draw a line between, being a pest, but being persistent enough that something actually happens. And I wasn't hearing from the guy after the third email. And so I did a little Google foo, and I knew he had dealerships, and I found, at the end of it all, I found his assistant, a number that I called, and his assistant picked up. She put us together, and finally I was in contact with the guy. Responded to emails, and I don't know if they were in his junk box or whatever. We start sharing texts, and we're trying to make this thing happen. So a year goes by, and we don't make it happen, to the point where I'm starting to think maybe it's not going to happen, because he would fall off the radar. And I get he's a busy guy. I mean, I've got a busy schedule as well, but he's a busy, wealthy guy. Even Pebble Beach. So Pebble Beach 2019, the following year, I'm there working for Ferrari, and we're at Casa Ferrari, and I know he's a Ferrari customer, and he's there, and I just kept missing him. I didn't see the guy. So fast forward to the end of 2019 now. I'm in Florida in December. I'm trying to set it up with him. He agreed to a date, and I'm stoked. Now I'm going to go drive the car. And about a week out, I get an email from the guy saying, hey, by the way, I had forgotten the Toyota 2000 GT worldwide reunion that Toyota puts on, however often they do that, was happening at Fuji, and he was going to be out of town. So I missed him again. I still had to be there for work, so no harm, no foul. But again, we didn't connect. Fast forward now to January of this year, and it looks like the stars are aligning again. I'm in Florida to do a program, an event BMW puts on called BMW Brand Summit. Right after that, I'm in South Florida. We're getting together. And he starts becoming kind of hit or miss again on texting, so I'm concerned that maybe it's not going to happen. Fast forward, it's going to happen. I drive to the dealership. We agreed to meet at the dealership. He sends me a number, and he says, call this number when you get there. It's funny, it was sort of like this clandestine meet the president behind the scenes, or meet the Pope or something like that, right? So I show up, I call the number, and it's a guy, Paul, and I call him sort of his handler, but I think one of his assistants, the guy that takes care of his cars, I think is what his title was. And I got to the dealership early, and I'm like waiting to call the number, and 15 minutes out I call, and I finally meet him in the cafe in the dealership, and the guy could not have been nicer and more accommodating. Like, do you want a coffee? And I'm thinking, no, I just want to go see this car and drive this car, right? So we make our way to what the owner calls the toy room, okay? And I'm going to paint the picture for you of the toy room, because we first walk in. I still haven't seen the owner. I'm still with Paul, the handler. And we walk into the toy room, and there's a right side and a left side, and there's probably, I can't quite remember, probably 30 cars on either side. On the right side are the red cars, and everything that you would expect to be there is there. There is a 488 Pista there. There is an F12 TDF. Actually, the coolest pairing, there was an F12 TDF beautifully spec'd, by the way, right next to a 275 GTB, kind of the similar red color, and it was kind of the bookends of the front engine V12 series cars. Amazing. There was an F60 America, one of 10, and this one apparently had a special one-off carbon top that Ferrari built just for his car, so his is kind of one of one in some ways. Amazing. At the end of that row, a couple of early post-war Bentleys that I'd never seen. One I think was a 1958 S1 Continental, lightweight, fastback something. Freaking gorgeous car. Amazing. That's the right side. But that's not the side we care about in this story. On the left side were a bunch of racing cars, mostly Toyota racing cars, that all get driven, by the way, by the gentleman, which is pretty cool. One was the IMSA GTO Celica. He had a Celica from the Celebrity Long Beach race. Toyota Crown in perfect condition, as if it was brand new from the dealership. The new Supra, he had a new Supra there when those cars had just kind of started to trickle out. Amazing. But as you walk down that road, you get to the reason I was there, and there's all of a sudden a sea of 2000 GTs. 13 at this point. When I first met him, I think he had 9 of them. He now had 13 of them, including one of 2 of the convertibles, which, they built a convertible for the James Bond movie. I don't know why the second one came about, but he had the second one. I had seen a photo, Shmee 150 did a story, and there was a photo, a still that I found on the internet somewhere of, I think, 9 2000 Gs lined up. And I remember looking at them and figuring out which was my dad's, because the European cars had different side markers and different mirrors and different finish on the wheels. And so I figured out which one was my dad's. And I think it was like the third one of 5 red ones that he had parked together. And so I had assumed that it would be there. But as I walked up, I realized it was the first one. So I don't know if they had stationed it sort of there because they knew I was coming. To paint the full picture, you have to imagine I'm really excited, right? I could not have been more excited if you told me Scarlett Johansson was gonna ride me like American Pharaoh, right? I am stoked, I am pumped up. So I'm already super antsy, and as we walk up, Paul the handler makes his way towards the car just as the guy, which I'll continue to call the Pope, right? That's a kind of an apt name. Just as the Pope says to me, so do you wanna hear it start up? Yeah, duh. And I don't know if the car had been started and they'd already sort of pre-warmed it, but he starts in, turns the ignition, the car fires up right away, and it was just, it's funny. I thought I was gonna get super emotional in the moment. Like I thought, I'm gonna tear up. And instead I just had this like stupid grin on my face the entire 3 or 4 hours I was with the guy, to the point where like my cheeks were, your face starts to cramp up when you smile a bunch. And I just had to smile. And I did get the chills when he fired it up, because I mean, you gotta remember, this is the car that started me on this lifelong quest to, I started racing because of that car. I became a car designer because of that car, partially, as I had said before in the other story. So this is, I mean, it's a special car to begin with. It's a really special car to me. And it's the first time I'd seen it since I was a little toddler. So it was amazing. So we started up, idled there for a moment. Now at this point, my buddy who was with me when I first met this gentleman, the Pope, in Pebble Beach, arrived. He was late. He got caught on some drawbridge or something. He was running late. So he showed up, and then we get together, and then the Pope gives us the tour of both sides of the garage, tells us a little bit about each of the cars. We obviously had shut off the 2000 GT, my dad's. And after the tour's over and we shoot it a little bit, he turns to us and goes, all right, boys, it's time to drive, right? And I'm like, this is the moment I was waiting for. Like, I'm already stoked. I saw the car, I touched it, but now we get to drive it. And so he looks at my buddy who's about 6'3", tall, lanky guy, and he's like, okay, you're gonna be in the convertible. And he turns to me and goes, you're obviously in the Puerto Rican car. He refers to it as either the Puerto Rican car or 084, which is the serial number is 000084. So he calls it 084. He goes, you're in 084, you're in the Puerto Rican car. And he said, and he goes, I'm gonna take the German car. So he had one of the other red ones he had there was a Swiss car, I wanna say, owned by a German. And this guy had tuned it a little bit, had done some things. So instead of the Mikuni Solex carbs, it had Weber's. He'd done some suspension work. And I mean, to me, I'm just like, whatever. So we roll out 3 2000 GTs, 2 red ones and this off-white convertible. And I'm still like, it's now the first time I've sat in it. Paul has started it, moved it out to the exit of the garage, and he's lined up the other 2. And I'm sitting in it now, and it's fired up. And I'm just, first I felt like a circus bear in it. I looked like a gorilla in the thing, because you forget how dainty those cars were. So just before we got in the cars, the Pope comes up and he goes, you boys are professional drivers, right? He remembered when we first met, we told him we're both former racing drivers, and my friend, former WRC guy, the only American to drive for ProDrive, legit driver. And so he's like, you boys are both pro drivers, right? And we're like, yeah. And he goes, all right, try to keep up. And I'm thinking, the ball's on this guy. But as it turns out, probably a good little heads up. So we get out there, and we pull out of the dealership. We're on the normal roads, and probably for about 2 or 3 miles, when we finally emerge onto the highway, and he's taking us to some special roads that he knows. And he turns onto the highway and just starts ripping. I mean, I remember hearing the car, I'm like, all right, that's how it's gonna be. I'm gonna stay with you. So we're rolling down the highway now at 100 miles an hour in these 2000 GTs, a pack of 3 of them. When would you ever see that in your life? I remember at some point, he's kind of moving in and out of traffic, being relatively respectful of traffic. He's not cutting anybody off or anything, but we're making our way through the traffic. And I look in my mirror to see my buddy, and we've lost him. I think he got caught between one of the, couldn't quite make one of the lane changes. And the Pope isn't letting up. He's on the gas, right? And I'm no sucker. I'm staying with him. If he's going 120, he might have been, I'm going right there with him. And so we're ripping down this road, and I remember thinking, I'm never seeing him again, because how the hell is he gonna catch us? And all of a sudden, the Pope backed it off to like 100 or 100 and change. And I look in my mirror, and I see a 2000 GT coming, and my buddy had the thing. I think the cars probably did 130 something back in the day, and he's flat chat catching us, which was incredible. We get off the highway, we're going down these back roads, and the whole time I just can't believe this is actually happening. No, we didn't go to Moroso, to Palm Beach Raceway, and drive him on the track, which that would have been another amazing, next level of amazingness. but we're still driving the you-know-what out of these things. We end up in this little park, we stop by the water, shut them off, get out, and I'm still buzzing, right? And we're shooting the for a good, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, looking at the cars, take a bunch of pictures. So we get ready to set off again, and he decides he's gonna take the convertible. And so he looks at me and goes, why don't you try the German car? I'm like, all right, I get to drive another 2000 GT. And then my buddy jumped in my father's car, the Puerto Rican car, 084. And we set off again, and we sort of basically retrace our route back for not quite an hour, but we're in the cars a lot, and we're, again, not being kind to them. We're driving them probably as my dad drove it back on the island. I mean, we're hammering them, we're going for it. The roads weren't quite as cool, not quite like the Puerto Rican roads with the twists and turns, but still we found some curvy roads and all of that stuff. So we get back to the store, we park the cars, and I just remembered being in awe that even happened. I mean, the likelihood of meeting the guy. Of not only meeting the guy, but that the conversation leads us to 2000 GTs, and that, oh, by the way, I have your family's car. Blown away. And then the generosity of the guy, not just to let us drive his cars, but to take the time. I mean, he's obviously a really busy guy. I have a plan to do something, to create something as a thank you to him, but even that, it's like I can't thank the guy ever enough for being so generous and giving of his cars and his time. So it was a day that I will obviously never ever forget.
Homeowners insurance may just seem like some boring thing that you have to get a mortgage, but it can be a surprising way to actually save a lot of money. Policy Genius is your advocate to do that. They shop your policy and your insurance needs amongst all the major carriers and find you the best deal. In fact, every time it renews, Policy Genius does it all over again. They check everybody else, they make sure you're getting the best deal, and if there's a better deal out there, they switch you for free. Policy Genius can also bundle your homeowner's policy with your car insurance policy and save you even more. Policy Genius has saved their combined auto and home insurance customers an average of $1,127 a year. So visit the link in the description below, tell them a little bit about yourself and your property, and they'll tell you if you're getting the best deal. Be sure to thank them for their support of VINwiki.